let's go first on the midterm exam. We decided to start in the second hour of the day, 19th is Wednesday 19th. We start second hour, first hour we do class, second hour we start the midterm exam. Then we will not finish it in 1 hour and we'll continue on the 24th. This is because a few students told me they cannot be present on the 19th and asked me to do it on the 24th. Others cannot do it on the 24th. So we do both 19th second hour and 24th first hours. I'm not sure we're gonna make it, but we try it. Okay. I will need the registro for the day. Alisa, yeah. The registro. So as I told you, it's 2 questions. One question is about antiquity and Middle Ages. One question is about modernity, early modernity and social contract theories. This is going to be the midterm exam. The midterm exam, you got a grade from 18 to 30 and it's going to count for 40% for the final grade. If you don't want to study right now and you want to study all together, it's okay if you just come in June and do all the program. Doesn't make a difference. The thing is, I'm going to check if you studied or not. Either now or if you know the things, I mean, if you'll be able to understand the basic concept, either right now at the midterm or at the end. Those who made the presentation can obviously avoid to restudy the things on which they do presentation, and that's all. So internships. So for now we have 4 interns. I'm gonna see if I can find the new tasks for all the people who sent me their wonderful CVs and cover letters. You're all very well skilled, all the people who sent me application for internship, so I hope I can find new tasks, but for now I don't have it, unfortunately. So yeah. So what is the course of history of political thought about in this moment? In this moment, we are done with the Middle Ages. Long period of time, the Middle Ages. 1,000 years, from 400 after Christ to 1400 from after Christ. So 1,000 year, very long moment in the history of humanity, in the history of Western civilization, in the European history, let's say. When we say Middle Ages, it refers to European history. Because when Middle Ages ends, it's the moment in which Europe start to be less and less the center of the world. Because as we say, the Middle Ages has a symbolic point of end in 1492, when it's the so-called discovery of America. From the European point of view, it's the discovery of something, a new world that changes perspective and changes. If you look, as we will see in the last part of the course, if you look it from the other perspective, what we call modernity started with an act of colonization. It was not the discovery of a new world. It was that the Europeans colonized the Americas and killed all the people living there. So it was the moment of a genocide that Europeans did against the Native Americans. So we start to get out from this moment, and then we have humanism, Renaissance, we have the scientific revolution, the invention of the press, which also fostered the Reformation. Through these 4 main elements, we enter a new era of European civilization, in which all the things that were in the Middle Ages start to change, because the Middle Ages are not so important for the history of political thought, because the main political institution was the Roman Catholic Church, and the main principle is that we have to stick with the religious principles of the Bible, and that the political principles come from the religious principles, from the moral principle of Christianity, and from the idea that in this planet, in this earth, politics cannot be really achieved in its best form because it's already achieved. It is achieved in the city of God, as St. Augustine told us. So, for history of political thought, to understand how we move from Middle Ages to modernity, we have considered one main thinker, which brings us from Middle Ages to modernity, which is Niccolò Machiavelli, political thinker from Florence, who has been for a long time considered like evil, like the embodiment of evil, a very, very bad guy. Why? Because he said politics is not about the good and the bad, like it's moral. Moral is about the good and the bad. Religious principles have divided the world into good and into bad. But this is not the principle of politics. Politics is an autonomous domain with its specific laws, and these laws are not the laws that we see in morality. It's not about defining what is good and what is bad. It's defining how to increase the power of the state in order to increase the well-being of the populations living in the state. Like, for example, right now it's 1 week all the time talking about Trump and Vance bullying Volodymyr Zelensky, right? Or other people who said, yeah, but he went there and he was he was not showing his submission, his gratitude, and blah, 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 blah. So, one was bullying, the other was not respectful, and us was disrespectful. What Machiavelli would say about this? Yeah, you're talking about morality, but politics is not about this. It's not about treating the other person in a moral way. It's about seeing if you are caring about the interest of your state. So this was Machiavelli would go on television and say, yeah, guys, okay, stop this moral debate about how Trump and Zelensky behave from this ethic point of view, and let's discuss if their behavior was in the interest of their states or was against the interest of their states. So this, shifting the thing about saying, in this way, Trump is favoring the interest of Putin, or maybe Trump behaves this way because he wants to separate Russia from China, because his main problem is the power of China, and is that right now Russia and China are strongly allied, and we want to break this alliance, and so on. So this is the thing. This is the thing, So it's about the interest of the state. So sometimes, according to Machiavelli, you can behave brutally, but in a way that in politics is very good, because sometimes you have to act brutally, immorally, to preserve the interest of the state. So we study Machiavelli. Machiavelli is so important because he started to look at politics as a material thing, as an immanent thing, which is in this world and which has its own laws. And these laws doesn't come from studying theology, from studying metaphysics, or from studying ethics, but from studying history and how things are able to change in history, and the interest, and if you go in the interest of the state or not. But we do not consider yet Machiavelli modern, because it doesn't still have the idea of the state. It doesn't think yet in terms of state. He still thinks that's very important in terms of republic. So Machiavelli is considered very bad because he wrote The Prince, and say the prince has to behave in this and this and this and this way. But when he writes his other book, The Discourses on Living, he says my favorite form of government is the republic. He wants to, rebuild again constitution which is like the Roman Republic, So he's a Republican. So it's very important because it starts to, separate politics from all other things and start to say politics has its own laws. These laws are about power and are about the interest of the political community. So he says, the prince, all politicians have to act with virtue, but virtue is not a moral thing. Virtue means that you act in the interest of your community, of your political community, which sometimes implies to act bad. So virtue, different from virtue in ancient Greece, also sometimes implies acting in a bad way. Virtue and fortuna and fortune. So he says, to be a good prince, you need to have virtue, means that you need to act in a way that is in the public interest, but also it's about fortune. What is fortune? Fortune is that you have the lucky of being in the right moment at in the right place. Like again, Volodymyr Zelensky. He was a TV actor. He was just a TV actor, By chance, he becomes the president of Ukraine, and right now is one of the most, discussed men in the world, and so it's fortune. You have to also be, history makes the difference. History makes the difference. And sometimes maybe you have the best ruler in the history of humanity, but it's in the wrong moment, in the wrong place, and it doesn't make any difference. So it's virtue and fortune. And from here, from Machiavelli, you start to say, okay, let's divide politics from all other things. We enter early modernity, and in early modernity what we want to understand is why we get to develop a political thought and a political doctrine who start to say we have to build a state. And the state is the result of a social contract between the population and the sovereign. This is contractarianism. This is how the political thought started to bring the process that has brought us to live under states, to be organized, to organize politics on a global level on states. Right now, if you look at almost all the space of this planet, the space which is Earth, which is Terra, not sea, not oceans, but the space in which we have land, is almost 100% divided into states. So states are the forms in which we nowadays live politically. This was not the case for 2,000 years in history, because as we saw, we lived under polis, under the cities. The cities in ancient Greece were the states, in ancient Greece were the cities, were an urban dimension. We lived under republics, we lived under empires, we had the feudal system. So, states is a modern thing. It's a modern thing. We start to grow up in the ideas in early modernity from 1500, and then it develops for 2 centuries, and then it becomes a strong institutional reality with the French Revolution, with the American Revolution, and still nowadays we still live under states. Then we have the processes of globalization driven by capitalism, where sometimes saying, okay, capitalism is supranational, state is national. So we have this movement of the global market who goes beyond the state, it becomes international. So you have globalization, you have international entities who becomes more important, like the United Nations, like the WTO, like the OECD. So you have international organization becomes more important in some moments when you have globalization, but right now we see that states are still getting more and more important, and you have the reaction of nationalist parties, of sovereignist parties who say, no, we still have to live under nation states. And so we have a very strong nationalists right now who say, no, we want the sovereignty of the state. Stop with this globalization bullshit, we want to get back to the nation state. So states, what are we doing right now is trying to understand how we can do these strange ideas of the state. And to understand this point, we study a political doctrine which is called contractarianism. Contractarianism is very new because whilst in the Middle Ages you think that power of the sovereign comes from God, from God's will, contractarianism starts to say no. Is a contract between the population and the sovereign. The power of the sovereign comes from the people, from the population who decides to give you power. This is contractarianism. So we observe three contractarianist thinkers who are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We choose these three because each one of these three gave a major contribution to the development of the ideas that we still have right now. Thomas Hobbes, the sovereignty. So we look at Thomas Hobbes as the first to really conceptualize the idea of the sovereign power, of the state as a sovereign power. And we look at Thomas Hobbes as this foundation of sovereignty. So we look at his book, The Leviathan. The Leviathan says, we make a pact all together, we make a covenant to give all our powers, all our rights to the state. Otherwise, is chaos, is state of nature, is the war of all against all. So he thinks the point is self-preservation. He lives in a time in which you have religious war all over Europe. You have people killing each other. You have a situation in which if you travel in Europe, you get robbed, you get killed, you get stabbed. So he says, the most important thing is self-preservation, is the violence. Social violence is the main problem. So we have to build a Leviathan who have a sword in his hand and can, and can kill everybody, break the law, and can punish everybody who breaks the laws. So Thomas Hobbes thinks of the state, of the sovereign power, as this construction of this mortal god that is the state, who is able to remove violence from society by taking himself all the violence, the monopoly of violence, through the police, through the judiciary system, through the army, in a way that violence is not anymore allowed in society. Only the state can exercise violence, has this power, and this power, which is above any other powers, is called sovereignty. And still nowadays, if you look at the constitutions of every country in the world, you still have the word sovereignty or sovereign somewhere. Most constitutions of the states that nowadays exist start to say this country is a sovereign country. Means it's not anymore under the control of either country. There is no other powers above this power. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. Then we have gone to John Locke. John Locke is important because he's the founding father of liberalism. We have to understand that Western societies still believe that the liberal principles are the most important liberal principles. So he's a contractarianist like Thomas Hobbes, but he says, okay, if you live in the state of nature, is not the state of war of all against all, as you think Thomas Hobbes think that all men are bad, all men are cruel, all men are self-interested and only act in their own way. Because human beings, they're also smart people and they understand that they have natural rights that they don't want to break. So these natural rights, for example, for Locke, life, freedom, and property. So if we live in a state of nature without police, without government, without courts, we tend to respect these things. But we don't have a sovereign power who can decide when we have a conflict over someone. So if myself I argue with Abnana, who's gonna say if Abnana is right or wrong? If I say, okay, Abnana did hurt my children, I wanna kill her because it's right. You don't hurt children in society, so I wanna kill her. Who decide if it's right to kill her or not? So it's the state of nature, according to Locke, is not that bad because we respect natural rights, but we don't have a power to decide in case of controversy. So we enter the social contract. But how is the social contract for John Locke? What is a right social contract according to liberalism, according to liberal theory? Is a social contract in which government is limited. There is a limitation for government, and this limitation is called rights. Individual rights. Individual rights are the limitations that the government cannot surpass, cannot break. Individual rights. So here, when we say individual rights, we have to understand that also a difference. Like in antiquity, in the Middle Ages, community was the most important thing. If we think, of the ancient ideas of the Republic, you have to be ready to die for your country. Community is most important. Modernity in Western society is, the emergence of the individual level, of the person as the crucial point that must be respected. So, and we see that this was, also fostered by the rise of Protestantism, because Protestantism says you can talk straight away, you can have your individual relationship to God. You don't need anymore the community of the, of the church, for example, the Catholic Church, to establish and to talk to God. So we have this rise of individualism, and liberalism is about individual rights. Individual rights are the limit beyond which the government cannot go. So John Locke says, okay, Thomas Hobbes, you're right, we need a social contract, but in this social contract you made the sovereign power too much powerful. Because we say one moment that we sign this covenant among us and give all our rights and liberty to the sovereign, to the Leviathan, we cannot say anything anymore. John Locke says, no, we have to put some limitations. Liberalism is about putting limitations to the government. And these limitations are the individual rights. So, Locke says, yeah, when you sign a contract, it's binding for you, the people, but it's also binding for the government. So, if the government goes beyond its own prerogatives and act against your rights, against the rights that are recognized to you, against your natural rights, against your legal rights, you have a right which is called the right to resist. The right to resist means that you have the right to overthrow this government because you broke the contract. Okay? You can still find the right to resist in the American Constitution. It's an article of the American Constitution, and this is one of the reasons why in the United States of America is a constitutional right to bear arms, because maybe one day they can be useful, to exercise this right to resist liberalism. Liberalism is a political doctrine that says power must be limited. Power must be limited. This is why, the point is that at the United Nations, you say, yeah, every state can be here, can be sit here, but we have a distinction between the states who respect human rights and the states who do not respect human rights. The states who do not respect human rights are, despotism, autocracies. So they're not entirely legitimate according to the paradigms, the values of Western societies, because they don't put this limitation. Why liberalism is so obsessed about limiting government? Because liberalism is based on negative freedom. Negative freedom. So today with Jean-Jacques Rousseau we will consider positive freedom. But let's keep again negative freedom. Hobbes, Locke, they think of freedom, of liberty. They have an idea of liberty which is negative liberty. Negative freedom. What is negative freedom? Negative freedom means that freedom, liberty, is the absence of rule. So when there is not a law that says you cannot do that, when there is no regulation, a limitation, and blah, 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 you can do whatever you want. And this is freedom, this is liberty. This is why they want to reduce government, the legislation, in order to give you more liberty that you want. Liberalism is about giving liberty. And in order to give liberty as negative freedom, you have to limit the government. So you expand rights, you make more rights in order to make more limitation to the action of government. This is, how it was born. Obviously, it's much more complex. It's much more complex right now, but we will see at the end of the course. So, Abnana, come here. So, Abnana wanted to make a presentation on John Locke, and she's gonna tell us something more about John Locke, and then we're gonna skip to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. A recap of what I just said. Okay, Abnana, so you have this paper.
Hi everyone, myself Abnana, nice to meet you all. So today I wanted to do this presentation on John Locke and the foundation of liberalism. Actually, Professor already explained everything, so my presentation is something like a recap of everything. So we all know that John Locke was a very, very great philosopher, and his way of life and his idea of life have brought a very great difference in this modern democracy. So today I will be speaking about how some of his events have helped in it. So first of all, who was John Locke? So John Locke was born in the year 1632. He is from England, so basically he is an English philosopher, and his philosophy was really a very important philosophy because he was someone who looked into the human's life. He was someone who looked into the government. He studied on the government. He studied on the rights of the people and the life of the people. So that's something really crazy. Because of this, he was also known as father of liberalism. And he was called as father of liberalism obviously because he was someone who looked for the equality of the people, for the freedom of rights, which is so important even in today's day. And and not just that, by the way, he was also a physician and he is also a political theorist. He wrote a lot of theories in politics. All of this work was so important that it was also a kind of influence during the Enlightenment period in the 17th century to 18th century, like because of all his great works. And then there are some major works that he have also done besides doing about the human rights. He has written some books. One of the most famous book is the Two Theses of Government, which he wrote in the year 1689. This book was really very important because in this book he highlighted a main topic that he says that the government should protect the human rights. And he also says that the ruler does not have the absolute power. This is so important because what this means, like for example, let's say there is a young boy of a city, he wants to study in a school. So the government should not stop him from studying in the school, but instead the government should protect him and let him study in the school. This is the right of the government. The government should let the people live, let the people do what they want to do and protect them instead of stopping them. And he also says about the absolute power that the rulers, he doesn't really believe in this monarchy thing that the ruler had all the divine power, the God and all of this. And not just that, he also wrote another essay which is about concerning human understanding. He wrote this in 1690s. This is very important too because in this he was exploring every human's knowledge. So basically he was understanding that every human being with their experience in life, they learn new things. Like he was knowing the limits of a human being. Okay, so these are like very crucial because these have also influenced in the American and in the French revolutions. And then here I explain about his political philosophy. As I said that he rejects the divine right of the kings. Just as I said that he doesn't believe in this absolute rights. He believes, absolute power, that the king has all the majority power. He doesn't believe in that. He says that there should be the separation of power. He says the protection of individual right, which I already explained. And there should be the limitation of the government. The government should have their limitations. And then, which professor already told about the Locke's natural right theory. This is one of the very, very important theory that he said. Basically, what is natural right theory? Natural right theory is something like the basic human rights that we need. Like, let's say the three most important natural right theory is life, liberty, and property. What is life? Life is just that let me live, don't kill me, let the person live, we listen about it when a girl child is born, they want to kill. No, they don't want it. But what he says is every human being has the right to live. Nobody deserves to be killed. And the second thing is liberty. Liberty is simply being free. You have the right to do what you want to do and no one has the right to stop you. This is liberty. And the third thing is the example that Professor told yesterday, that if someone takes a tree and cuts it down, manufactures and make it into a table, and it's his own property now. So if I buy something, the property belongs to me. So this is like the basic natural rights that we use even in today's day. And it's something basic that we wanted to tell that there cannot be a surrender. Like the government should not stop people from having these rights, but instead the government should just simply protect them. And then I have written about this, the social contract and the government. Social contract, just now Professor said about the agreement that is between the government and the individual. So it's just so simple that it is that the government has to sign a contract. Like let's say that there is a president who is standing for election, and the president says us that once you elect me, I will take care of all this health care of the people those who are sick. But once he signs the paper and people agrees to it, okay? So the agreement is mutual, that the people agrees that this is thing that will happen, and the government agrees to protect our rights. Okay? Now let's say that the government fails to do it once he got elected. So obviously now we should have the right to drop him down. Okay? So it's like the people has the equal right to revolt them and remove them if the government doesn't keep his words. So this is the most simple way to explain this, that basically it's about the right, that the government should agree to do the right. Similarly, the individual should follow these laws. But if the government fails, then the individuals can have the right to remove the government. And the next slide I wrote about Locke's influence on modern liberalism. Obviously, in this modern generation, like even today's day, we use all this in the democracy, his human rights, his about freedom, equality, everything we use even in today's day. And also in the American Revolution, this was like a legacy. Even today's day, it's a legacy for us. We all live in our life following all his rules that he has made. And then the conclusion is just that the Locke's idea on freedom and equality and government remains central to political thought today. Just as I said that even today's day, these ideas are used, his legacy has not died. We still use his legacy, his ideas, and we live, and he's a very great inspiration for all of us today. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Nana. Presentation was very, very good. So it's very important that you, during the course, you guys develop skills for making presentations, because this is going to be very useful in your life. So, as you say, for presentation you have to make good slides, and also you have to speak good. Nana was very good because she was not just reading the slides, but she has very good speaking skills. So, very good, Nana. You didn't understand how the presentation works because you sent me presentation for Ansi. So before she sent me presentation for antiquity, after we did antiquity, then she wanted to make presentation on liberalism after liberalism, but it was very good. In general, when you make presentation, you also make some quotation from original works. But you're very good, you have very good skills, the presentation was good. So, this is the thing. Do we have somebody who's going to present on Jean-Jacques Rousseau? Yes. So, wait. So, you have quotation from, you have the social contract book? Yeah. Okay. Wait. So, we get into Jean-Jacques Rousseau today. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, founding father of democracy. Founding father of democracy. So we tend to think that liberalism and democracy are pretty much the same thing. It's not, because we think in terms of liberal democracies. They're pretty much not the same thing. Like Donald J. Trump. So democracy is interested in the fact that all the the USA people can vote and elect their president. You know, a liberal thinker, liberal principle, liberal theory is interested in the fact that he cannot do whatever he wants. So you have check and balances, you have limitation, you have the Supreme Court who say you cannot do this, you have the Constitution, and you check that he's not acting beyond his prerogatives under the Constitution. So democracy is expanding the power to give it to the people. Liberalism is limiting the government in order to respect individuals. So democracy looks more at the people, liberalism looks more at individuals. Democracy is, obsessed with equality, thinks a lot of how to make all individuals equality, for example, through equal political rights that everybody can vote. Liberalism is not interested in equality, is interested, in limited government so you can expand all your potentials as a citizen, as an individual. So we have seen liberalism through John Locke. We will see again something about liberalism in the 19th century, in the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution. We will consider the definition of liberty in John Stuart Mill, an important liberal thinker. We will see the critique of democracy by Alexis de Tocqueville, important liberal thinkers. But right now, we go to democracy. Founding father, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau, very nice name, famous name. He was born in Geneva. Where is Geneva? Switzerland. So, he was very talented. He didn't only write about political thought, he also wrote about pedagogy, education. He was, he had a very good autobiography. He was pretty much, a very talented guy. He was a kind of a genius. He was one of the most important and known political thinkers in Europe. So, what happened is that he also wrote in 1762, he wrote two important books, Le Mille about pedagogy and The Social Contract. The Social Contract is a very famous book for political theory, as you know. It's another contractualist. So he writes the social contract, Le Contrat Social. So what happened to him? He was persecuted. He was persecuted for religious reasons because he also said, politics is a civic religion and so on. So he was persecuted. The last part of his life was not that happy. He was persecuted. He died in persecution. He had to go to exile. So not very happy. Not very happy. But what happened after he died? After he died in 1789, what happened? 1789 in France, what happened? The French Revolution. So they did the French Revolution, and they took the ashes of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, they brought it to Paris, and they put it in the Pantheon. Within the Pantheon, you have the ashes of Jean-Jacques Rousseau because he's considered the guy who put the ideological foundations of the French Revolution. So, as John Locke is, let's say, the big ideologue, the ideological father of the American Revolution, together with Cicero, as John Locke is, the ideological father of the American Revolution, Jean-Jacques Rousseau is the ideological father of the French Revolution. So, the founding father of liberalism is very important for the American Revolution. The founding father of democracy is very important for the French Revolution. So, when he died, he was pretty much unhappy, he was persecuted, but after he died, his death, after the French Revolution, they brought his ashes to the Pantheon. If you go to Paris right now, you see one of the most important and beautiful buildings in Paris, the Pantheon. The Pantheon is where all the main, thinkers, inspirators of the principles of the French Republic still are there. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau is one of the most important. So, Geneva, as you know, still nowadays Switzerland is a federalist country divided in small cantons. There is the canton of Geneva, in which they divide it into small cantons because they say that at a canton level in small communities we can do self-government. So he was born in Geneva. Geneva, it was a kind of, city republic. He was living in the Republic of Geneva. It was pretty much advanced, but still, suffrage was limited, citizenship was hereditary, and so on. But it was very, very, very much influenced by being in Geneva, by being in a state who was a dimension, or a city was a good dimension for self-government. So, main works. Okay, the first work is, why is not titled here? So, the first work is a discourse on arts and science, okay? Le discours sur le rétablissement des sciences et des arts contribués, blah, blah, blah. So it's a discourse on science and art. It's important. Why? Because here he addressed the principle of enlightenment, which is going to be the next topic of the next lesson. So his relationship with enlightenment. He didn't like enlightenment so much because it was too grimy, it was too cold, it was too focused on science, and the reason why he was kind of more romantic guy, but still is considered one of the inspirators of enlightenment, which is going to be the topic of the next lesson. So we're not going to consider this is only important for his relationship with enlightenment. Discours sur les origines et les fondements de l'inégalité parmi les hommes. Discourse over the origin and the foundation of inequalities among humans. So this book, Discourse on the Origins of Inequality, is a book on the state of nature. So it has two different books. One is on the state of nature, and then you have Le Contrat Social, ou Principe du droit politique, the social contract or principles of political law, political rights. And this is about the social contract. So you see here very, very clear the division of contractarianist theory. State of nature, social contract. State of nature, social contract, as in Hobbes, as in Locke. We also have in Rousseau, state of nature and social contract. So we start with the state of nature. Discourse on the arts, you have a look, but is less important. Right now we wanna go on this discourse on the origins and the basis of inequality. So the basis of inequality. So liberalism is obsessed with liberty. Democracy is obsessed with equality. That's crucial difference. Liberalism wants to protect and promote freedom. Democracy wants to protect and promote equality. So the problem is, it wants to see why there is inequality among men. Why is there inequality among men? Why? So here we encounter a very different political anthropology compared to Machiavelli and compared to Thomas Hobbes. A positive anthropology. Positive anthropology, as you can see also nowadays in the current political discourse. Positive anthropology, what does it mean? It means that you consider that people are naturally good. People are naturally good means that if you put them in a state of nature where you don't have government, when you don't have police, when you don't have the army, when you don't have the judges, when you don't have the prison, when you don't have, coercion, they behave pretty good. Positive anthropology. So, they say they innocent. They originally innocent. Human beings are not that bad. They initially innocent. So, state of nature. State of nature, he completely disagree with Hobbes. He's saying a state of nature, the natural man is similar to an animal. He's at peace, it has its own physical needs, but there is abundance in nature because you have fruits, you have vegetables, you have animals, you have fishes, so you can provide for your basic physical needs, and you have your self-love, amour de soi, and you have compassion, pitié. So you behave according to this self-love and compassion, and also you have a kind of empathy with other human beings. If you see another human being suffering, you're not happy, you're not enjoying other people suffering. So it says, so this is the state of nature, and all men are equal in nature. All men are born equal, they're equal in nature. But what is another characteristic of human beings? Perfectibility. Perfectibility. So, perfectibility, it means that human beings have the capacity to rapidly adapt, to transform, to learn, to better satisfy their needs, to become better version of themselves, to progress, to make new things. So this is what brings us changing the original state of nature. In the original state of nature, you have human beings who behave or very, chill out. They only, you imagine yourself in an island, desolated. Let's say they're gonna destroy. We're gonna be deported in the, I don't know. Let's go to Vulcano or Salina or Lipari. Lipari is too big. Let's say one smaller. Alicudi, Filicudi, in these small islands. So in these small islands we have fruits, we have nice sea. What are we going to do? Are we going to fight each other and blah, blah, blah? According to Rousseau, we're going to just enjoy our life because we're lucky, we're Alicudi, Filicudi. We're going to swim, we're going to fish, we're going to cook, we're going to, we're going to grow vegetables, and, we behave, we live like animals in peace, and we respect each other, and there is compassion, and blah, 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 blah. Kind of peace and love community, according to the state of nature of Rousseau. But there is also this thing that we are perfectible. So maybe one day I say, okay, but why don't we try to build a proper, a club, a barn, a nice house? So you want to evolve. You want to evolve. It's natural for human beings. So this is why this original state of nature changes. But the original state of nature, again, is made by positive anthropology, innate goodness, freedom and equality, absence of evil, limited needs. The corruption comes from civilization, not from anthropology. It's not the anthropology, the human anthropology which is corrupted, is civilization, is society. Yes?
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
How has liberalism balanced its commitment to equality with persistence of social and economic inequality?
Liberalism is not interested in inequality. We're talking about democracy. Democracy is interested.
Did you commit the persistence?
Liberalism.
Yes.
So liberalism is really not committed. According to liberalism, if you look at liberal theory, what is the basis of liberal theory? Say, we must have equal opportunities, but then each of us is pretty much different. So we have to give equal opportunities, but then we're not equal. So it's right that you're richer because probably you're smart. It's right that you have more success because you're more talented, and so on. So liberalism says it's normal that you have very rich people, and it's not, and it's even good because liberalism, what does it say? Is inequality is a very good thing because I see that one person is in a better condition than the other person, so I'm stimulated to do better in order to get into a better position. Because if everybody is equal, according to liberalism, you have no reason to do better. So inequality for liberalism is a basic foundation for doing better. Clear? So for Rousseau it's different. For Rousseau, inequality, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. So, again, Positive anthropology. People in their natural state are basically good. Is basically good, so it's the opposite compared to Hobbes. Hobbes say in the natural state people are bad. They behave very badly, they kill each other, they would be so. It's, you know, man is better, man is good. So this position by Rousseau is very important. Because what he says is, so you can say Rousseau, but why, if that's so bad, why in society you see things that go so bad, people acting against each other, self-interest, you know, domination, violence, and blah, 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 blah. And Rousseau says, because they are corrupted by society, because they are corrupted by civilization. So it's, you know, it's the natural principle of the division between right wing and left wing. So right wing say he behaved bad, he made this, he was a drug addict and he committed crime, so he has to go to jail. And if he does it again, he goes to jail for the entire life. And if he does it again, death penalty. Left wing, yeah, but he was drug addict because he came from a deprived family. You know, her mother was raped by his father when he was a kid, and then he didn't have the opportunity to go to school, and then he grew up in a difficult neighborhood where there is deprivation and you have no other options but selling drugs and so on. So it was not his entirely choice to behave badly. He was born good when he was a kid, but then society didn't give him the condition to behave good, and so he behaved bad. So instead of bringing him to jail, you should give him more opportunity to have a good life. You should address the situation of the most deprived human urban neighborhoods, and blah, 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 blah. So negative anthropology, bad anthropology. Democratic states. People were born bad human beings, not that bad, at least, or they are good. If there are the conditions in which they grow up, which puts them in a difficult situation in which they don't have the entire choice, and sometimes these external conditions force them to behave bad. So, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was the first thinker who started to say this kind of things in a political way. If you think also Jesus Christ, was saying something similar, but in a different way for different purposes. So, again, state of nature. State of nature is a thought experiment. It's a state that no longer exists. Maybe never existed, but you know, it was the man before civilization. So you see it more in an historical way. It's human populations before civilization. You know, you have this original state in which people are living under natural conditions, but as again, there is perfectibility. So they want to do better and better and better and better. So they start a series of developments, but these developments are corrupting. These elements are corrupting. You know? So, what happened? Let's see what happened. So you have state of nature. You have state of nature, human lives in this primitive and solitary condition. So, we as a class, we go to Lipari Island, which is desert, there is nothing and blah, blah, blah. Everybody just mind his own business and, you know, eat very good fruits or go fishing or, you know, we do the things. Primitive, solitary condition, no society. So what does it happen at a certain moment? You know, people who are talented, who feel, you know, more ambitious and so on and go on, no? Like for example, let's say New and Abnana, they say, yeah, but I mean, why don't you build a house? Because we smile build a house, and they build their house. So then Sabrina joined them and built another house, and then and then Lynn also built their own house, and you have the village. They say, but if we live next to each other, we start to behave better. It's convenient. You can go fish, you can go to grow lettuce, and then you eat fish with lettuce. So better living in a village than each of us alone. So you have the village for what really Rousseau doesn't like is the introduction of property. They say at the moment in which you say, okay, in the moment in which Abnan take a field and put a fence on this field and say, this field is mine, is the beginning of corruption for Asman. Because property starts the division between those who have and those who have not. The division between the rich and the poor. The division of labor in society, for which some people have to do shitty labor and earn very few money, and some people do very good jobs and earn a lot of money. So then property, and then you have the formation of government on the notion of sheltering the poor, protects it says, I want to protect population, but you only preserve the interest of the rich, of the most powerful. And so he said, at the end, for him, you have tyranny. For him, the situation of Europe at this time was tyranny, because you have the monarchy, you have the aristocracy rule all over the people. So, this is the situation. This is the situation in which you enter civil society and you create a situation in which, for him, the problem was not the problem of the state of nature. The problem was the problem of society at his time. Because society at his time was divided between powerful monarchs, aristocrats who have a lot of power, and there is this profound inequality. So it doesn't like inequality. For him, property is the main source of inequality. This is why we have to do the social contract to radically transform society. So, any question about these points? No questions? Okay, so we have a presentation of social contract, right? So, social contract. The social contract in Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So, again, we see a difference. We see a difference because here we have a positive anthropology. We think that men are good and they're corrupted by society. Society was not giving the possibility. You need a doctor? Is there? So, again, democracy. As you see, democracy is very, very, very different from liberalism. Let's say again, liberalism is about liberty. Liberty is the absence of the state. The absence of the state is to limit government in order to promote the individual, to promote, the thinking of the individual, the capacities of the individual, the potentials of the individual. Democracy is a way in which we say, since human beings are born equal and good, and they're corrupted by society, why can we replace a situation in which this equality is for real? So, he sees private property as an origin of inequality because it divides rich and poor. Okay, here you have two. Is it which kind? Oh, very good. What's your name? Victoria. Where are you from, Victoria?
I'm from Russia.
Russia. Okay.
So, today we're talking about Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his book, The Social Contract, which was written in the 1762, and about democracy. Well,
Why should we learn about Jean-Jacques Rousseau? He was a French philosopher born in 1720. And he laid foundation for the modern democracy and the theory of a social contract. His ideas inspired the French Revolution and had profound impact on the political philosophy. His book, The Social Contract, have 4 parts. And the first one, he talked about why people need a social contract, and when political power where political power comes from. On the second part, what kind of law should exist, and the concept of general will. And the third, how government should function, and about democracy. And the fourth part, the role of citizenship, public assemblies, and religions in this state. But today we are talking about democracy mostly. Some key historical aspects. The book was written in 1762. At the end of the Years' War, the large-scale conflict between the major European powers that weakened France and fueled public dissatisfaction with the governments. Meanwhile, France was ruled by Louis XV, and the country was experiencing social and economic crisis, growing inequality, and widening gap between the common people and elite. Also, we need to remember that the book was written in Enlightenment era, which provide us such philosophers as Voltaire, Montesquieu, Locke, and Rousseau was inspired by their works, but he took a more radical stance on the governance and the role of the people in political decision making. In fact, I'm not doing such work as my previous colleague. I focused on the quotes, and I want to read some quotes about social contract, sovereignty, general will, and democracy. So, the first one is, the problem is to find a form of association which will defend and protect with the whole common force the person and the good of each associate, and in which each, while uniting himself with all, may still obey himself alone and remain as free as before. Sovereignty, being nothing less than the exercise of the general will, can only alienate it. The sovereign being formed wholly of the individuals who compose it, neither has nor can have any interest and contrary to theirs. In the general will, as long as the several men together consider themselves to be a single body, they have but a single will, which is concerned with their common preservation and general well-being. The general will is always right and tends to the public advantage. About democracy. If there were a nation of gods, it would be governed democratically. A government so perfect is not suited for man. In the strict sense of the term, a true democracy has never existed and never will exist. There is no government so subject to civil wars and agitations as a democratic or popular government. The people of England regards itself as free, but is grossly mistaken. It is free only in the election of the members of the parliament. As soon as they are elected, slavery overtakes it, and it is nothing. Democracy suits states are small and poor. So some conclusions. In the social contract, Rousseau argued that democracy is incompatible with the representation institutions and the sovereign power of the people is unalienable and cannot be delegated. As a direct democracy is possible only in small communities. And he concluded that the legitimate democracy is unfeasible on the scale of nation state. That's it.
Thank you, Victoria. So, as you understood, what does he want to do? He says society is corrupt. It doesn't like the society in which he was living. Why? Because inequality. So he didn't like inequality. His main problem was inequality. Locke, main problem of Locke was freedom, liberty, rights, individual rights. Main problem for Jean-Jacques Rousseau was inequality. This is why he wrote a first book on the state of nature, which was called The Discourse on Inequality. He didn't like inequality, he wanted to fix. So, whilst, for example, for Hobbes, the Enlightenment was the state of nature of war of all against all, for Rousseau, the nightmare was his own society based on domination and on inequality. So how to fix it? He wrote another book, The Social Contract, Le Contrat Social, to fix it. How can we fix this? We have to find a form of association which will defend and protect with the whole of its joint strength the person and property of his associate, and under which each of them, uniting himself to all, will obey himself alone and remain as free as before. So this is the fundamental problem. Right now I'm going to explain this part, but it's an important quotation. So in the contract that he wants to do is the complete transition of each associate with all his rights to the whole community. So according to this contract, all citizens turn over all their rights to the state. What they get in return is a share of sovereignty. So there are several points here very important to see. So he wants to say, I want to do a social contract. Like, is more like Hobbes, the social contract, because he really wants to give all the power to the state. But this power then gets back to the people. So, the point is, I want to do a social contract, so I want to do sovereignty. I want to do sovereignty exactly like Hobbes, but I want to do all the sovereignty to the people. You know, democracy is power to the people. So, I want to make all the social contract gives all the power to the sovereign state, but then the sovereignty must belong to the people. Like Italian first article of the Constitution is, Italian is a democratic republic based on labor. The sovereignty belongs to the people who exercises in the forms established by law. So he wants to make sovereignty, strong sovereignty, very strong sovereignty, just like Hobbes, very strong sovereignty, but he wants to give the sovereignty not to the Leviathan, not to the monarch, not to an assembly of people, but to all the people. Sovereignty is democracy is power to the people, is sovereignty to the people. So he wants to do a strong state. He doesn't give a shit about limitation, liberalism, blah, 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 blah. He wants to make it strong because only by making it strong you can remove inequality. He wants a strong state, but wants to give the power of this state, wants to give the sovereignty to the people. To the people. So, the contract gives each person two different statuses. In one capacity, he is a decision-making member of the community. equal to all other members. In another is a subject standing in a particular relationship to the community. Thus, the contract creates a particular relationship between the individual and the public body, which is a member. So, Rousseau's contract parts ways with the liberal tradition, in that complete submersion in the community entails at least potentially a complete renunciation of negative freedom. So it's not very much interested in negative freedom. It doesn't belong that freedom is the absence of law. So what he thinks is we have to build a social contract. This social contract must make a strong power, because only a strong power can remove inequality from society. And we must all give all our rights and liberties to this power, because this power is the power of the people. It's based on the idea of general will. So we as a community in a democracy, if we want to be democratic, we have to say, okay, we all together can decide everything. No limitation, no negative freedom, not individual rights. We can decide everything. But what then decide everything is our general will, is our collective decision, is a decision that we make all together. This is democracy, this is democratic decision. Democracy means we sit together and we make decisions all together. Okay? So, we have the general will. The general will should make decisions. We sit down all together, we're equal in this assembly. And this assembly has to express the general will, and we have all to obey to the general will. If you think about it, democracy is exactly like this. If 51% makes a decision, 49% have to stick with this decision. You know, if we're gonna elect the president, you know, and we elect the president of our assembly, yeah, the 49% who didn't elect this president has to, you know, comply with this president. This is democracy. We make an assembly, we give all the power to all of us, all the power to the people, but when we make a decision we have to stick with this decision. So, let's see the crucial point. Let's see the crucial point. Positive freedom. Positive freedom. This is different. This is different. So, again, so far we have seen Locke, Hobbes, negative freedom. Negative freedom is the idea of liberty that we have in liberalism. Again, what is negative freedom?
Absence of law.
Exactly. It's the absence of law. So you don't have law, so you can do whatever you want. Positive freedom, we can say, is the freedom, is not freedom from the state, but is freedom within the state. So, what is freedom for Rousseau? What is positive freedom? For Rousseau, freedom is the absence of domination. Is the absence of domination. What is domination? Domination is when you have to obey laws that are made by others, in which you didn't have voice. In which you didn't have voice. So, positive freedom is the freedom of only obey laws that you have contributed to create. That you have contributed to create. So, freedom is the fact that I'm free to participate in our assembly in which we make the decision all together. So, the point is, if we're an assembly all together, we decide tomorrow we have to dress all in pink, like the class of tomorrow. So positive freedom is the fact that I have participated in our debates. I have expressed my opinion. I have said, yeah, but why should we dress all pink? And then we discuss and blah 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 blah. And at the end, you know, you perceive myself that I have to dress pink maybe, and I have say, okay, I vote for dressing pink. And or maybe I voted against dressing pink, but I have participated in the discussion and so on. So positive freedom is the freedom to participate in the state and to contribute to the process that creates the laws and to which I have to obey. So absence of domination means that you participate in the creation of laws, that you build positive freedom. This was the idea of freedom in all ancient time, for example, because in ancient time, in classicity, in antiquity, you didn't have the private sphere. There was not a distinction between private sphere and public sphere. So freedom in ancient Greece was be a free man, be a free human being, means that you have the freedom to participate in the assembly way, the decision. Freedom as participation in the construction of the laws that we make together. And so Rousseau takes again this ancient idea of freedom in which you have this participation that creates the general will of the people. The general will of the people is different from, say, is your will plus your will plus your will plus your will plus your will. It's not only, you go and you vote. Is direct democracy. We thought that democracy could exist only a direct democracy. Why? Because when you enter this assembly, this community, you make your own statement. You say, yeah, I disagree in dressing all pinks tomorrow. But then we create a situation in which we persuade each other, we discuss, and so there is the general will which comes up, which is the result of a decision. And we have to respect this general will. The general will of the people, you have to respect it. The sovereignty of the people, you have to respect it, even when you do not like it. So it's a very strong power, but it's democratic because it comes from the people and it comes from the equality of the people because we all can vote and each of us has one vote, we consider it equal. Is that clear? Yes.
I just want to ask, how does the concept of positive freedom in the this concept of positive freedom in the social contract is reconcile the individual autonomy with collective authority?
Yeah. So let's say now that's interested Rousseau in individual autonomy and freedom. He's not very much interested. So for Rousseau, if you look at individual autonomy and freedom, it brings back to you accumulate private property and you do self-interest, and if you have some bad men in society, they can do whatever you want. So this is a problem. This is a problem. Why? Because then the French revolutionaries, when we're going to see the French revolutionaries, we will see this concept of general will of the people who dominates in the French Revolution. You have Robespierre, the Jacobini, the Jacobins. It was the most radical party. They read Rousseau very, 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 very much, the Jacobins. So they made the French Revolution and they say, yeah, we have to abolish aristocracy. And then, because why? Because people hate the aristocrats. And what is the general will of the people? Is to cut the head of the aristocrats. So they cut the head of all the aristocrats. Then the revolution was going on, but then they had the opposition from we have to cut. So it was called the terror. It was called the terror because he didn't give a shit anymore about individuals. He said we have to feel the general will, we have to feel the sovereignty of the people, la souveraineté populaire. And so it comes up that the assembly, the democracy, the power of democracy was so strong, the power of the sovereignty of the people was so strong that you came up in doing a lot of killing and a lot of violence. So, la volonté générale, general will, So, you make this community to overcome the situation of inequality and corruption that was present in this society. You have to build a community which is a democratic community, in which all human beings are equal, politically equal, in the sense that they can express their own ideas, their vote, and so on. And so from this community, from this direct democracy comes up a volonté générale, general will, which is not just we are voting, but we are doing a process of collective deliberation, which express the general will, you know, and this general will always reflect, you know, according to Rousseau, the common good of the society. And you know, this is the result of the legislative body, no? In which you have direct democracy. The people do not elect representatives. They are sovereigns and establish the laws. So we have to bind, we have this social contract according to which we submit entirely to the general will. So we make a sovereign, but the sovereign is the people, and we have to obey to the sovereign. So it's just like Hobbes, but instead of the Leviathan, you have the people. And this is the only legitimation of the power. So what you know, I said it was deeply influenced by being in Geneva, because Geneva was a small city which was self-governed. So this is, you know, so society must be small, no? There cannot be significant difference in regard to economic status, religion, race, or cultural practices. So this property thing, property must be protected, but there cannot be too huge difference in terms of property. Citizens must be virtuous, and society is found on common interest. So, again, positive freedom. It means that freedom is self-government. This means freedom, positive freedom means absence from domination. And absence from domination means that you do not have to obey to laws that you don't have contributed to create, that you don't have to obey to laws made by others. So the positive conception of freedom, positive freedom, according to Rousseau, according to democratic theory, is the fact that people enjoy freedom if it makes its own laws rather than having them made by others. So positive freedom is the fact that self-government is the crucial, the central political idea, which is closely associated with democratic political forms, with democratic practices. In a democracy, the people governs itself rather than being governed by an external body, either monarch or nobility at Rousseau's time. So Rousseau demands that self-government, that all citizens be able to vote directly and not through representatives over the laws. So, as we say, negative freedom is not a central concern for him. More important to him is freedom as self-government. In a legitimate government, all citizens must have extensive rights to participate in the political process. So positive freedom is liberty as political participation. His reason for is perhaps bound with this great concern for equality and lack of dependence. So, the idea of self-government can only be realized if all citizens vote on all laws, so that will, la volonté générale, can be represented. So, again, sovereignty must be created by the social contract and must be given to the people. So, democracy is sovereignty to the people. And this is, they wanted to create a sort of civic religion. So you see that there is something transcendental in this will of the people. You feel that the people is not, just the addition of all the individuals, but it's something more, it's something that has a volonté générale. So you have a kind of metaphysic, you have a kind of transcendental being in this democratic process. So that is said, we have to transfer, all the symbolism that we have to religion and blah 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 to the republic. We must create a civic religion, like they did indeed in the Pantheon in Paris, which secularized secularized, religious forms, ideas, and ritual in the idea of the republic. So thank you very much for your attention. We will see you tomorrow. So tomorrow we close with this part with the social contract, and midterm exam is gonna be on the course until this moment, from antiquity